Good morning, everyone. This is Lee, and I love to introduce Melissa here for you as well. And I'm coming from Australia, and Melissa's coming all the way from Canada. So it's actually morning for the Australians today, and it's in the evening. Is that right for Melissa? For the Canadians at the moment as well.
That's right. Or
Yeah, absolutely.
it's about 5 o'clock.
Absolutely. So we're having a great conversation today, and we've had a bit of a chat first in our green room, as we do before we come along board. And we're wanting to share with you some of our personal insights around leadership. And both Melissa and myself are both leadership facilitators, and we're also leadership coaches as well. So, strap in. I think you're going to have a great time. And if you are listening, say hi to us and give us some encouragement to actually share more of what we've got to tell you today. So I'd like to start off first, Melissa, about telling you a little bit about a leader that made a huge influence on me as a coach. When I started my coaching world and I transitioned to the corporate arena. And that was in about 2010 was when I was invited in the corporate arena. And what was happening, I was doing a lot of individual coaching because I started my business in 2001. So I had roughly about 9 years experience coaching women and men who seeked me out personally outside the organization. Because back then, Melissa, it wasn't as common back then in 2001 for people to have coaches. It wasn't, I suppose, the in thing in Australia anyway. I'm not too sure about Canada, but in Australia, it wasn't really the in thing at that time. And what was happening was obviously, they did the work with me, and their managers started to notice a huge change in the way that they behaved. Their confidence started to lift and everything else as well. So what had happened was this lady I was working with, her general manager noticed the difference in her, and they had a candid conversation about, well, what happened. He was really curious as to how come all of a sudden you're being assertive and you're more productive, and you're stepping up and you're actually having a voice. We're actually hearing you speak now in meetings, and you're starting to hold your ground as a leader. And so they had this conversation about me, and that's when Raymond Faulkner, who was a general manager of Holiday Inn in Brisbane at that time, invited me to meet me. He was so curious that he wanted to actually see me. And, of course, I had that conversation with him, but I think the biggest influence I had, and because he invited me into the organisation, and I worked with all the senior managers and everything else, and then I worked with him personally as well as a coach. But the thing that stood out most about him to me was his humility. He was a very humble person. And what would happen when we had our coaching sessions, we would get in the lift and go upstairs to one of the rooms in the hotel because he wanted to have privacy. I mean, that sounds a bit funny, doesn't it? But he wanted to have privacy from the office and things like that as well. And this particular day, this cleaner was in the lift, and he knew everything about this cleaner. He knew the cleaner was having a hard time, with his parents. He was going through some, serious medical issues and things like that. And he spent the time to turn and engage with the cleaner and show the cleaner that he was interested and he valued the cleaner. But there was that certain level of connection there as well. Like, he was really focused 100% on the cleaner, and giving the cleaner hope, which I think is really important for leaders, hope that everything would be okay.
Mm.
And that to me, and he was a very quiet leader. He wasn't a loud leader, very quiet leader. Now, this general manager, he gave me a raving testimonial and also put a review on my LinkedIn profile as well. He was the person who was of service, really giving, and that was a role model because I was only 9 years in coaching, and it was my first big corporate gig, and it didn't worry him. He took me as the same level as himself. So it was an amazing, amazing experience. So what I learned from that experience for me, one was, quiet leadership, having that quietness sometimes is so powerful. It's not how loud you voice your opinions or whatever, it's the essence and the time that you take to connect with people. How about yourself? Have you had an experience that's like a leader who's really influenced you a lot, Melissa?
Absolutely. Mine are more kind of personal to me and to my journey. I was so lucky. There was this period in my career where I had a number of inclusive leaders that were just really incredible, but one was first. So I worked for about 15 years. I started selling mortgages at 19, which
Mm.
really makes no sense. Sitting across the table from a family and remortgaging their house and doing things like that. Like I look back and I go, oh my goodness. But that was how I got my start in finance and in my career. So I sold loans and mortgages starting, like I said, at 19, right from soliciting them, underwriting them, closing them, the whole deal. And then we had to collect them, which was a very interesting perspective. We could maybe talk about another time. But I worked at a company. I didn't love the work. However, they were good to me. When my husband at the time, anytime he got a job across the country, I could pick up the phone and have a job anywhere, and they moved me around. So, but we had moved home to Stratford, Ontario. That's where I'm from. And I
Mm.
was, I am done doing this kind of finance, and I want to work at the bank. So I went into every single bank in Stratford to try and introduce myself to the manager. And I was propositioning basically that I could help their turn downs, rehabilitate their credit, and bounce them back to them, kind of thing. And that was going to be my in. I went to 8 branches. One let me in. One branch manager let me into her office, and we had a wonderful conversation. And we talked about what I could do for her, and what my job was, and how I thought I could help her. And I thought that was just a great way to make a connection.
Mm.
Where I worked at the time happened to do our banking in that bank. So I came in every single day. I made sure I was the one that took the banking across the street into the office so that she would see me. And one day, sure enough, she came out of her office. I have a job. I thought it right away, and I'd love to talk to you about it. And so, as the story goes, I ended up working for Connie, who is one of the best leaders I have ever had in my life. And this is where the inclusive part really came in. I had kind of waffled through my career. I'd always done well, but I was following my husband around doing, getting to that assistant manager kind of level, and turning down a few opportunities to become a branch manager because I knew at any moment we'd be moving, and I wasn't okay with leaving a team like that. But now we were staying put. We were in Stratford. In the meantime, I had spent a number of years on long-term disability because I have epilepsy. So at the time, I wasn't able to drive. I do drive now, which I'm super grateful for. But
Yeah.
at the time, I couldn't drive, and we would live in a little town that's at least 50 kilometers away from another branch, more like 100 in most cases. So I did really well at the bank, and within the first 3 months, the assistant manager left, and Connie, sure enough, came across. She's like, I know you took a step back to come here. I think you can do this. I know you've never worked in a bank before 3 months ago, but this is what you should be doing. And
Mm.
look back at that, and how many leaders would have said, there is a personal banker who has some potential, but doesn't drive, and we don't usually promote within the same branch, which as a general rule is a good idea, right? You want people to get out and get different experiences. It's hard to transition from being a peer to being a manager. But what that started was a chain of events that I went from personal banker to assistant branch manager to branch manager in that same office within 14 months. And any other leader would have probably just still had me in that first office, making them look good, being productive, still being
Yeah.
kind and nice and things like that, but going, this doesn't fit inside my box, so I'm not going to do it. Right. And I'm just so grateful to this day to have had her. And she really, really, really made a difference. And I had a few other great leaders down the road after her, thankfully, with the bank and
Yeah.
before going out on my own. But that inclusive leadership truly did change the path of my life.
Yeah.
And it helped me find my purpose, because now my purpose is to help other leaders understand how through inclusion they can get the best out of their people. And I really believe that's what's going to change the world.
Absolutely, and it's amazing for yourself because you obviously wanted to be noticed,
Mhm.
and you did the appropriate thing to get noticed. So it's about sometimes we've got to do more than expectations. We because there's been times that I've talked to different people in the workplace, and some of them, no, not everyone, but some of them have the mindset that I've got to wait until I'm getting paid to do more.
Right.
I want to get paid to do more. Whereas we know in business, it's different. In business, we've got to perform first, and then people see, what you do, your skill set, and everything else as well. So then you get paid after you show that you're extraordinary, or that there's a difference in you, or whatever. So it's a completely different mindset. It moves away from, I think, some people have that mindset it's a right, or it's a right. It's my right.
Right.
It's my right kind of thing as well. Instead of thinking about graciousness and everything else as well to actually get ahead within the workplace as well.
Yeah, and
And
it can be
yeah,
quite frustrating if you feel unseen, but there are
yeah,
certainly ways where you can position your value and make sure, like you said, you're putting in the work and showing up every day
yeah.
and doing it so that people do start to take notice.
That's right.
You have to get out of that mindset that they should already know what I'm worth and they should already know how
Exactly.
amazing I am. No, you got to show them first, and that's how that works, right?
That's right. And even the mindset sometimes of feeling like I've been in the organization all of these years, it's just naturally my turn to get promoted. And you got to earn your right first before you get promoted within the organization. It's a completely different mind shift, everything else as well. And that's really interesting because I was, reflecting on your story and everything else as well. And obviously, when I go into and work with, organizations and things like that, there's always people who resent a newly appointed leader,
Mhm.
especially if they've been promoted internally as well. There's almost that they've got that resistance straight away because they've been successful, whereas maybe other people in the organization feel disappointed or let down because they didn't get the opportunity that was given to them as well. And I really love the idea of knowing your people, Melissa, really knowing your people and knowing, what's the best way to lead that particular person, because not one thing fits all. It's having the insight and the emotional intelligence which comes through leadership. So you can start to see what's really going on. Is your team member engaged? Are they competent? If they're not engaged, why aren't they engaged? Because when people are actually brought on board through the recruitment process or anything else, when they first enter the organization, you probably find 99.99% of the people are really motivated and engaged with the organization. So sometimes we've got to stop and look, well, what happened? What happened along the way for the engagement? Because the recruiter wouldn't have put their hand up and say, hey, I want to employ people who are not engaged. I want to employ people who are not motivated. And this is where I love the model of the situational leadership, that I use a lot when I work with my clients. And that's really understanding, obviously, do I go into coaching mode? Do I go into delegating mode? Do I go into participating mode, or do I go into telling mode? And obviously the answer to that is all depending on where your individual team member is, what's actually happening. So say, for example, if they're really engaged, but they're doing an onboarding process, they don't know how the organization operates. They don't know the expectations. They don't know where the files are kept or anything else. They have to, the leader has to spend some time with them to bring them up to speed with the expectations of the organization. So obviously they need to spend some time with that new team member, or they need to delegate someone within the office to step into that mentoring role to help that person through the onboarding process as well. And that can be foreseen if the members of the organisation don't understand about team dynamics and they don't understand about different leadership styles. That can be perceived as, why is this person being delegated task, and the leader trusts that person, whereas with me they're actually almost micromanaging, because the team members are on different levels of engagement and competency. And so I think leaders really need to know how to adapt and adjust and understand what's going on with the individual team member, but also to inform and educate the members that, this is why I'm doing this with you. This is, I want to help you. I want to help you to the next level. I want to develop you. I want to encourage you. I want to, try and talk to you about trying to engage and motivate and care of what's going on as well. I think that's really important, to not have that attitude that this is the type of leader I am, and this is how I'm going to lead everyone exactly the same, because we're people, we're not objects.
Absolutely. I don't think you could be more right. I was making some notes because there's so many things that you said in there. It made me think of the difference between equity and equality, right? So equality is the exact same for everybody. That's equal. Right? Like, I'm going to treat everybody exactly the same, regardless of where they are, what they need, who they are, what speaks to them, their personality, whatever it might be. And I even think back to my job, my story about working through from being a personal banker to a branch manager. The tellers, or the customer service reps, had to teach me how to be a teller. Now, if I was hired as a teller, I probably would have got fired. Like, that's what would have happened. But I had someone go, okay, no, but I see that they add different value. I see that there's value they add. I don't need to take them back to step one of entry level, because that's not where they are, right? So some other people might have said, that's not fair. They never worked at a bank before. They should have to start as a teller, same as everybody else, kind of thing, right? So there's a very, very simplistic version of that. I used to actually play a game with some of my leaders. I don't know if you've ever seen the game Heads Up. But
I have, yes. Yeah.
One of the other things you were saying makes me think of, we need to know the language that our employees are speaking. When you're leading, you need to know everyone's language, and they're all different. It reminds me, because I used to play this game with teams, and I remember one time, it couldn't have worked out better. Someone flipped it up, and the name was Sandra Bullock. And someone kept screaming, hope floats, hope floats, hope floats. For 60 seconds, they screamed the same thing. And they put it down. They were like, what was it? And they said it was Sandra Bullock. All you needed to say was speed, right? Like, and I was like, right away. But like, all this other person had in their head was hope floats. So we all have different languages that will bring out, and it's based on our past. It's based on our experiences. It's based on all of those things, and learning how to adapt and speak different languages. You might think, I am being super clear with you. Why are you not hearing what I'm saying? And this, again, is just it's kind of a silly example, but a clear one on, I am saying the same thing to you over and over, even though you're not hearing me. That is not adjusting your style, right? That's not adjusting to your team, and they're the ones that need you.
That's right. Because we all have different meaning to words. We all put different meaning. And so it's the same with values. We all have different meanings to values. Like if I say, cooperation or something like that, it's completely different. We have different values. And this is where I think it's important to spend the time to actually get your team members to actually give you their spin on what the values and the vision is of the organization. So it's about inviting them to give their perspective as well, so that you start to see, where their thoughts are. So I remember this coaching program that I did was always about, with your communication, you must put meaning around your communication, so people understand exactly what you're saying. It's no point getting people to do feedback and paraphrase back and everything else as well, if you can see there's a blank look there going, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing here. And that comes a lot also with different cultures, because some cultures don't want to say, I don't understand what you want. They feel embarrassed, or they feel inadequate to say, I don't know what to actually ask the leader to put their point of view across in a different way. You know what I mean? To actually ask them, or to feel, I don't understand what you're talking about. I need you to communicate it differently. A lot of people, they don't have the confidence to actually say that. I'm not saying everyone doesn't, but a lot of people, especially different cultures, who have to translate into their language, into their head, and then translate again when they actually speak, whatever it is they need to speak with their leader as well. That comes into play as well.
Exactly. And the kind of the table stakes to that has to be inclusion as well. It has to be inclusive
Mm,
leadership because you have to be in an environment where it's okay to ask questions, where it's okay
yes,
to disagree, where it's okay to bring a different opinion, where it's okay to go, I have no idea what you're talking about. But there are still lots of teams when a leader starts talking, everyone starts doing this. And that's
yes,
the most dangerous thing you can have. You will miss things if everyone's
absolutely.
agreeing with you all the time, right? But it's your responsibility to set up an environment where it feels safe to bring forward new ideas or to ask questions and things like that. The language barrier, it's interesting. I was in a conversation the other day about inclusive leaders, and we were just having a chat on Clubhouse, and someone spoke up. Thankfully, he felt comfortable to speak up, and he said, you two just said, one of the other facilitators said, I'll touch base with you later on that. Like it was right at the beginning. And he said, just for an example, I have no idea what that means. You're gonna go over to her house and touch her, and what base are you talking about?
Exactly.
Right? If English isn't your first language, even if you speak English very, very well, some of these like subcontexts and sayings that we have just kind of built in, no clue. Like, right? It doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. It gets really confusing at times, doesn't it? It's really interesting, but there's so much involved with leadership, but what a joy to be a great leader. I mean, when you have a good leader around you, or you have the ability to be open to other people's point of view. You're wanting to serve, you're wanting to help people to achieve more or develop more or whatever. It's so rewarding when you start to see the people in your teams step up into their own personal power as well. So I believe that having that personal awareness, so you understand behavior, you understand what's really going on with your different team members, is absolutely essential. And it's not just having the self-awareness, it's also self-control of your own emotions too. So that when you're having a stress day, when you're being stressed and everything else as well, you're not downloading the stress onto your team members as well. So that's really important as well. And hi, Wendy. Thanks for joining us, Wendy. It's great to see you there. Um, don't you think that's so important to not to download your stress or your bad day or onto your team members and things like that?
Yeah, 100%. And you talked a lot about self awareness. I think the first step to becoming a really good leader is knowing who you are and what you
Mm,
bring and what you don't bring and what happens when you're under stress and you're under pressure and you're under timelines. And, you have a personality that yours and theirs are just kind of like this. It's your job again to know first who
mm,
you are, what that looks like, where you can spot it coming earlier, those kinds of things. It's so, so important because you will feel it. Like I know when I used to walk into a branch, when I was an HR business partner, I would walk into a branch and you could feel it. You could feel if this was a place that was heavy or if this was a place that was fun and was light and people were glad to be there, including customers. And it
mm,
comes out in the results too. Like it is so, so important. And I really do believe that leadership and inclusive leadership is the key to unlocking the power of diversity, right? So we know
mm,
how important diversity is. We have all the stats on how much more companies make when they have a diverse leadership table and a diverse slate of candidates for roles and things like that. But what we don't talk about enough is that how do you unlock that power? Because just putting a bunch of people at the table that look different or have different backgrounds gets you nothing if you're not really valuing what they bring that's different than from what you have. And I know
mm,
we're both entrepreneurs and we work with entrepreneurs as well. And I think this is so important for entrepreneurs to know too, whether they're leading a formal team, like whether they've gotten to the place where they're hiring, or they're even just looking at contracts at maybe a virtual assistant, a business manager,
mm, mm.
website, find people that are not like you, that don't think like you, because you've got you and all your greatness. You want to bring in people around you that don't
Mm.
think like you, because you got this and they got that, right? That we've got to remember.
Exactly. And that's a really good topic you're talking about there as well, because obviously I work a lot of entrepreneurs as well as the corporate as well. And that transition to an entrepreneur who's never had formal education around leadership, and they don't really know how to choose their team member and things like that. Because one of the biggest mistakes that people do if they haven't got the skill or the background or the education around knowing what type of person would be a good fit for their company or whatever, is they choose someone who's the same as them because they feel very comfortable with them. But I know me, for myself, my personality type, I'm the big visionary. I'm the big, I love to dream. I'm the dreamer, and I'm the ideas person.
Yeah.
And for me, I've got to, when I get my ideas out, I got to use mind maps. I got to throw stuff out before I even put them in any order at all. But with my team members and things like that, I need someone who's completely anal, who's really that detailed person who drives me crazy and keeps me on track and enforces that the rules have to be followed and everything else as well, because that complements me. And if people in business don't understand that, what they do is they bring in a duplication of themselves, and they wonder why there's that lacking detailed or visionary or whatever that
Mhm.
they need to have in the organization as well. So understanding people and different behaviors, and also having those difficult conversations, which is part of the leader's role, to be not always comfortable, to be able to have candid conversations, but do it in a way that they're inviting that person to give them their perspective, and they're listening, and they're really, really trying to understand what's going on, and they're curious as to what's going on. So together they can come up with a solution that's going to fix the problem. That's so important as well.
Absolutely. And difficult conversations is a challenge from, a first level supervisor or junior manager right up to the C-suite. I have coached lots of
Yeah,
CEOs that are not great at difficult conversations and will
yeah,
leave them until they get a whole lot worse, right? Usually the sooner we deal with, the better. And there's a few things that they can use to do that. But I think, again, it still all starts with knowing yourself and then knowing your team and knowing that person you need to have the difficult conversation with, right? And there's lots of tools to kind of uncover and help you understand them more.
and it's that confidence too to have, because some people just want to be liked.
Yes.
They don't want to have the difficult conversations.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really important to develop that skill of, but also develop the skill of, I always remember Stephen Covey's work. Have you familiar with Stephen Covey as well, Melissa? Where he always says, first you need to understand before being understood.
Mhm.
So it's always, always finding out the perspective of the person you're talking about first, so you don't jump in and completely blame or completely go off on the wrong tangent or whatever, because then that loses trust and credibility with that particular person as well. But
Mhm.
there's so many dynamics, isn't there?
Absolutely. One of my favorites, actually, when it comes to difficult conversations that served me really well in my coaching is sometimes you need to be cruel to be kind. Not
Yes.
super literally, but usually having these conversations really, really early, things
Mm,
get course correct. And usually your employee feels it too. They're like, oh, did I make a mistake? Or I don't know what they're thinking. Or they want to have the conversation too. You just need to open the door. Where I find sometimes leaders who avoid these conversations will let it get to a place that then it's not repairable. Then we're
yeah,
talking about, separations and terminations and corrective action, things like that. That's where be cruel to be kind comes in. Because if you deal with it today, it's this big. If you put it
yeah,
off and it's this big,
yeah,
that's not so nice.
yeah, absolutely. So let's just wrap this up now. So I want to thank Wendy. I'll just see what you said there, Wendy. Thanks for participating. Was it choosing someone like yourself? Yes, completely so true. And this is why entrepreneurs wonder why they have so much difficulty when they've been their VAs and everything on board, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs think because I bring a VA on board, I can just leave them.
Mhm.
You've got to treat them as onboarding. You've got to be training them. You've got to keep in touch with them and understand they are a VA. That means they're there to help you. It doesn't mean you delegate a whole task to them and give no input and have the expectation that they are the experts in marketing, or they're the experts in doing something. They're there to help you. They're there to help you, like any team member is. It's so important to train and support and encourage them exactly the same as what you would do with a team member. So I feel the entrepreneurs can really learn from workplace leaders of how to look after their people and understand people and take time to understand team dynamics and everything else as well. And I believe that the workplace can take a page from entrepreneurs about putting yourself out there first, and before you're rewarded, like, really excelling and getting out there and caring for people and treating your position as though it's your business, which, and treating your team members as though they're the most important clients that you ever have, and in value you in. So I believe both of them can learn of each other depending on what role.
Absolutely.
So I just want to finish up saying, the characteristics that I believe are really important for leaders. The three characteristics I believe is important for leaders is: one is humility, being open to continually learning, and giving your team members hope and encouragement. What are your three qualities that you think, Melissa, for you?
Mine are humility's right up there with mine, because I really think you have to understand that you don't know everything and you need your team for sure.
Mm,
And
mm.
service leadership should be about service. It shouldn't be about getting the office or the window or anything. If that's what you're in it for, you may not be a great leader, right? You need to be in it because you want to see your employees thrive and do well, and your organization. If you're in corporate like that, you want to succeed with your organization's mission at hand too. You should want to be of service first.
Absolutely. So we'll wrap up there. So thanks everyone for listening. And thank you so much, Melissa, for coming on board. We'll have a quick chat once we stop the live, and to have a chat ourselves in the green room. But everyone else, have an amazing, amazing day. Lead with confidence, get out there, inspire, make mistakes, learn from them, and just become extraordinary and step into your own power.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk to you again in our next chat. With every week we're having a different chat with different co-hosts, and it's wonderful to be able to work with the international people now. So it's amazing for me. Online is absolutely amazing. It's limitless and everything else as well. So again, thank you so much for coming, and everyone else watching, take care and have an amazing day.
Thank you.
Bye.